This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
If you're like me, you never really learned about money. And with money being a taboo subject, and it's not even really taught in school, how do you even begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together? Joining me today is Cassie Ferrer, the numbers nerd, numbers consulting, to help us lift the veil and help you on a stronger path for your financial future. Hi.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for the introduction.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So money is such a taboo subject. At least, when I grew up in school, it's not, sure, you're taught to count money, but you're never really taught the fundamentals of money. And then as you get older, we're taught that we have these financial planners that take care of our money. And it just seems like this big, scary subject. So
Yeah.
how do we even begin to understand, things like debt and making our money work for us?
Yeah. So, that is so true. Money is not one topic that was taught in school. And, so is the concept of budgeting. All of that really, so it really would be great to be taught at school because it is really basic life skill. So usually when my clients come to me, they really don't have any concept of how to do a budget. They don't have any concept of how to save money or how to grow their money, where should they put their money and how do they invest. So I would say the first thing that you really want to do is really just take a deep breath and know that it's okay. But know that you also have to face it. A lot of people, they just run away and they will think, or they think that they have money in the bank and it should be okay. Really just break it down. You don't have to do it all at once, but you do have to first gather some information, like taking a look at, how much do you bring in realistically? And then the next step would be looking at how much money going out, how break down into different household items, like how much do you pay for rent, utilities and groceries. And once you get all those down, it's really not that difficult, is to see if you're bringing in more money than going out. If not, what should you do, right? And then next step is, and this is the really fun part, is to figure out your priorities and your values, right? Like what is important to you, and what are your values. And if you are sharing a budget like with your husband or your wife, then you do want to talk about the joint value. And this is the part that is so important to avoid argument in the future. And also know why is that important as well. One of my clients, and I want to use this as an example, because couples often argue because of money. And one of my clients came to me and she was telling me, like, she got in arguments with her husband because her husband constantly purchased energy drink. And she's like, I can't believe he spent so much money on energy drink. And I'm like, have you ever asked him why? Or are there alternatives? And she's like, yeah, I have. And he just said that's what he needs. He needs it. And I'm like, okay, well, ask him more questions. Like, why does he think now I'm not a health coach. There might be alternatives that are better for energy drink. But all I'm trying to do is to understand the why behind people's purchases, right? So she went and asked her husband, like, hey, why do you think you need energy drink? And he said, well, because I need it to keep me awake so I can stay at work so I can perform. Okay, why is it important for you to perform at work? Well, because baby, I'm right now kind of the sole provider. I need to support the family. And so immediately she was not mad anymore, because she understood the reason behind the purchase was because his core need was to provide for the family. Now again, I'm not saying that energy drink is good for you, but I'm just solely explaining, if it is so important to him, can you can you negotiate and can you have some trade-off? Like, what, let's take away this budget from movie and support your energy drink and still balance it out. Because if it's that important to him and he believes that, the only way that he can stay alert and keep up with his performance is energy drink until we find alternatives, right? So understanding the why behind that purchases. And then another thing is look out for any emotional triggers. Like when you're under stress, do you make all those crazy purchases?
Are
So
you
just
talking about
one thing at a time.
those Amazon purchases you do after the fifth glass of wine on a Friday night?
Well, that happens too.
Not that I've done that. I'm speaking for a friend.
We have all done it. We have all done it. And sometimes that's really the shortcuts. I explain to my clients that way is when they are making purchases based on their emotional need, is they're taking shortcut, right? Like we are all under a lot of pressure. I'm a mom and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also working commercial contract. We wear multiple hats and we're constantly under pressure. It's kind of like we're in a pressure cooker, if you don't release that pressure once in a while, it'll blow up. So when that happens, if we are not taking care of that upfront, the shortcut would be drinking or eating bad food, or for a lot of people, overspending. So what I advise my clients to do is watch out for those triggers and schedule in some time to do what's really help them release that pressure every day. So they're not, get to the point that, oh, I just need to go ahead and release that pressure by spending a bunch of money on things that they don't need.
Yeah, it comes down to that you're numbing your emotional triggers by, as you said, eating, drinking, or spending. It's usually one of those three that one or all of those three that you end up falling into. I just want to go back to, when you were talking about creating your initial budget. Are there, because certainly where we are, I'm in Canada, and even where I am in Nova Scotia, our house prices are skyrocketing. I can't even begin to imagine what people are going through if they're having to move to a bigger house or even get on that first rung of the ladder when it comes to, owning property. Um, is there sort of a recommended percentage of your budget that you should be allocating to your rent or your mortgage?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of experts have recommended, you should have 40% households expenses, you should have like 30% on, within 30% of one item, and the rest should be allocated between savings and debt repayment. But I personally challenge that number. I do think that if you learn to live below your mean, if you learn how to really like live below your mean, it is so possible to only spend 50% of your disposable income between household item and want items. And the rest really either, you do want to establish a emergency fund first. You do want to establish an emergency fund first. And then after that, then you want to allocate, if all possible, on between debt repayment and investing. The lower the percentage on one item, of course, the better, because then you can shift more of that one item to debt repayment and investing. And let me just share my personal experience. I have shared that not to brag, just to share with people that it is possible. I pay off my first mortgage in 27 months and the second one within 3 years. And I know it is possible. And when I share it with people, they're like, how the heck do you do that? Well, my mortgage on my first home was really less than 10% of my income. And the second one was less than 15%. So it is possible. It's just I really learned to live below my mean. And I also learned how to increase my income by having multiple sources of income. So that's something else I teach my clients is really living below your mean. And it's not easy for everyone because oftentimes we are driven by our ego, but only if you can see that you're living based on your value versus your ego, you can go so much further.
And I think the problem is people get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses. You know,
Yeah,
you see your friends, you see your family moving into a bigger house, and you're diminishing your self-worth based on, the material things you have around you. But really, if you're overextending yourself, you're just creating more stress and more problems, and then you're going to feel crappy about yourself anyways. So it's a bit of a vicious sort of cycle that we get caught up in appearances. um,
absolutely. And I get it. You do want to live in a safe neighborhood with good school, with decent school. And typically that, decent school, safe neighborhood does come in higher prices. We lived in a decent area. It's just I didn't get all the upgrades on the house, not right away. I slowly built it little by little. I didn't get all the nice furniture right away, like we picked based on location, number one, and that it needs to be in a safe neighborhood and it needs to have good school, and then the rest, like it kind of like, it's okay if it's not all renovated, we can do it little by little, right? So also buy at the right timing, we bought at the right timing, that's another thing. But and like you said, not keeping up with the Joneses, just know your personal value, and building your future is probably more important than spending and living with your ego mind at the moment.
and when it comes to paying off your mortgage, if I understand correctly, most mortgages have clauses in them where you can make extra payments, and when you make those extra payments, that money is actually going to the principal.
Yeah, that's really good call, because you do want to check and make sure that number one, there is no prepayment penalty for paying off early. I advise, my clients, if they're able to, and if they don't feel comfortable, they don't want to do that. But if they're able to and they have stable income, they have sufficient uh, emergency savings, look into getting a shorter term mortgage. The norm is everyone think that I need to have a 30-year term mortgage. Everyone thinks that, but you don't have to. You can get 15 years, you can get 20 years with much better interest rate and pay off your mortgage quicker. But it's just a norm. And you can also make extra payment toward the principal, because if you're making extra payment toward like months of payment, then you're not really paying down the mortgage principal. And then you're paying extra interest. And I also have other people that make argument like, why would you want to pay off your mortgage early? Because the mortgage interest rate is so low, you can invest in the stock market and get a lot higher interest. And I get that. And everyone's intention is different. For me, peace of mind is more important than the potential earning of the stock market may or may not. And it depends on what's going on too with the stock market. If it is, has already been crashed, does it contain good buying opportunity? For me, peace of mind is more important. So I don't like, personally, I don't like carrying debt. So that's just me. But if other people, they can guarantee 15 to 20% return and they know that for sure, it's very hard, by the way. No one can guarantee any return. But if, consistently they have been performing at 15-20%, good for them. But for me and my clients, we just happen to have peace of mind being more important than, than the potential opportunity.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. um how much should people have in their emergency fund?
Oh,
Is it
that's such a great question. That is such a great question. Some people, they will say, is it 6 months? Is it 3 months? That is a really good question. It depends. Now, now most of the time, you should really at least have 3 months of expenses, but it depends. How quickly would you be able to replace your job? Is your job, do they have a lot of jobs available in where you live? Are you mobile? Are you able to pack up and leave if you need to find another job? If you are entrepreneur, how quickly would you be able to replace a client if you're losing a major client? So if it's going to take you longer to replace your income source, or if you only have one income source, that's also present a higher risk. If it's going to take you longer to replace your income, or if you only have like one income source in the household, then you might want to have 6 months of expenses or even 12 months, because it might take you 6 to 12 months to replace your income, or for your income to go back to the level where it should be. But if you have specific skill sets, or if there are a lot of jobs available where you live, then 3 months might be enough. So it really depends on your comfort level and how quickly you'll be able to replace your income source.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, it could be 3 months, but you're probably safer in 6 to 12 months,
Yes.
depending, dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, depending on how quickly you'll be able to replace your income source. If you don't know, always safe to go with 6 months, right? Like, or even 12 months. If you're worried about it, just have it there. Because the thing is, if you worry about it, then things are usually gonna happen
Yeah,
versus like,
things happen. That's for sure. That's if anything, the last 12 months has taught us things will happen. We
yeah,
just don't know.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
you mentioned earlier income streams, and that's something that it's a term that I picked up on a few years ago. And it's something that I mentioned earlier that our we have two sons. They're 19 and 22, and it's one of the things that we've been teaching them is don't look for a job. You have to look to create revenue streams. So you have multiple sources of revenue coming in. It may just be a few $100s here and a couple $100s there, but look for alternatives to constantly have more than one revenue stream, as opposed to, for so long everyone's relied on having the job. The job was always the security. And if anything, again, this year has taught us is that there is no security, that you have to take your financial health into your own hands and look for alternatives to create revenue. Is that some of the things that you work with your clients with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mainly work with business clients to see how I can help them improve their financial health, but I also help with individual looking at their different income streams. And what I usually do advise my clients is you need to think about, your available income stream, your available income stream, and evaluate them. Like, how much are you getting from each income source and how many hours is it taking you? Right? Like, if you take you all day and potentially you can only make $60 versus your active job can offer you $60 an hour, then you probably want to pay more efforts into the job. Now, and that second layer, you can't just look at numbers alone, although it's very important to look at the numbers, but you also have to look at, your happiness. Like, does it make you happy? Is it gonna, and if it doesn't, then let's talk about a plan where we can find you something that, that will still make you feel fulfilled and still, generate same amount of income, and take a look at your financial baseline and all. But looking at your numbers is so important. Knowing where you need to be to serve that financial baseline, and then look for other ways to generate income. Like, if you're working for an employer, how can you improve your income by 10% by contributing more value, right? By focusing where your talents are. And if you are self-employed, how can you focus on the more profitable segment and more profitable clients to maximize that profit and cash flow?
Yeah, and that's it. Is it goes back to that old saying of don't put all your eggs in one basket.
It is important these days, I do feel like, to diversify. And there are really, and I was watching Grant Cardone's training the other day. I admire the guy. He talked about the four segments into building wealth. And the first segment is income, right? You are at some point, all of us, trading time for money. We are serving our clients. We're doing a job, right? And then number two segment would be tax deduction, that you have to maximize your tax deduction. And number three is spending and savings, like looking at your spending. And number four is investing. So majority of us in the beginning is really focusing on income. And the income piece is, it will involve active income. You're trading time with money, and passive income, which is you're generating money from, either your business stuff that you have already produced, and then you're getting paid like royalty or income from your business. And it does place more importance as you have more net worth to start generating more passive income from your investment. It does turn to have a shift. But if you do not yet have that emergency saving, if you do not yet have enough income to the level you can save, then focusing on a lot on the investment side is not going to be feasible, because you need to first focus on to the level that you're able to establish some of those baseline.
Yeah, you basically have to get your house in order. You have to understand your money, understand where it's going, get a debt cleared up. And then when you're in that position where you've gotten rid of your debt, you've got your emergency money saved up, then you can look at investing.
Absolutely, absolutely, um, absolutely. Get your stuff in order is really critical.
That is for sure. It is as trying as it can be sometimes to deal with this. If you're not a money person, it can be, easy to brush it aside, not pay attention to things. But at some point in time, whether you like it or not, it will catch up with you.
Yes, absolutely. And it can place such difficult stress too. And that's part of the reason I decided to left my corporate VP job, is to really help people to understand the importance of managing their finance, and helping them to get their finance in order, creating more impact.
And, just having, if you're, in a relationship where you're living together or you're married, it's having those conversations, because I mean, how do you even, it's not easy bringing it up and discussing it, because I don't even know why it's such a taboo subject, but it's not something that people typically sit around and discuss. It was never something discussed. My parents didn't discuss it with me. Like I said, we don't talk about it at school. So, how do you start learning about it? And it's just by solely picking away at the subject and exploring things for yourself that you can kind of sort of dig down and get an understanding for it. What is because your website, you have different tools and resources for people on your website. You also have a Facebook group. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website, thanks for asking. My website is numbersnerdconsulting.com. I also have a free Facebook group called That's Free Family. And if you go to that group, you'll see a picture of me and my family. And that group has a lot of free workshop. It has free, if you're a business owner, it has free cash flow workshops, a lot of personal financial resources as well. I've done savings workshop, budgeting workshop. And by joining the group, you also have access to my free course. It's called Personal Finance Mastery Course, and it's completely free. It comes with 4 modules. Talk about money mindset, how do you save more money, how do you do a budget, how do you organize your debt structure and all. So I created that course really solely to help people um, take the stress out of managing money. I mean, taking the first step I think is the most difficult. And and usually that's what it is for my client. They, like you said, they don't want to talk about it. They didn't want to talk about. But once they decided to make a change, because same action equals same result. So if you do everything the same way, you're gonna have the same result. In order for you to improve your finance, you have to do something different. And that's by learning. So I created that course really to trying to help people to improve their financial health.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today and just starting to lift the veil of secrecy around money.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just offer one last tip for
Absolutely.
clients? Because this tip has helped my clients reduce their purchases by 50% or more. So I want to share this tip with the audience. So whenever you feel like you need to make a purchase, especially right now, because it's so easy to order stuff from Amazon. I think, even my son, he's 4 years old. He knows how to order stuff from Amazon.
Oh,
So,
geez.
and when we feel like we are not connecting with people because of COVID. It makes it more difficult to travel. I do think that people are spending more money buying stuff they don't need. So whenever you feel like you need to make a purchase but don't know if it is the right thing to do, ask yourself 3 questions. Number one, do you need it? Do you need it? Is it something that you need or is it something that you want? Number two, do you need it now? Are you only buying it because it's on sale? Would you even use it in the next 6 months, right? Do you need it now or do you need it 6 months from now? Number three, are there cheaper alternatives? Like, do you have to, do you have to like buy this like $300 first? Or, can you just go buy with like a $30 one? Like, are there alternatives that will cost you less, right? So ask those questions, and I'll challenge you by number 4. If you think you really need it, what value does it support? Because sometimes you think you need it for the ego, not for your own value. So ask those 3 questions, and bonus question, is it in line with your value? It will probably reduce your purchase by 50%.
Wow, those are great tips. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride. Roller coaster.